we're ready to go, and we're ready to start with Whirlpool with Joe Liotine that is going to take us through Whirlpool world. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's a pleasure to share a bit about the Whirlpool company and kind of what's important to us and where we're going. It'll be a pretty quick presentation and invite all of you for some questions toward the end. There's a lot happening, and frankly, we're pretty excited about it. A little bit about the history of the company. It's 105 years old. It really did start with the image on the left is the first 15 employees back in 1911. And then really the image on the right is the first wringer washer. That's kind of the heritage of the company where we started. And we basically built machines like that without a lot of change for the first few decades. It wasn't until probably the 50s and 60s where you saw a lot of product development, category expansion, brand portfolio expansion, and geographical expansion. So it's quite surprising to look at some of those products and say, what did they do for consumers back then? This is an image of our current CEO, Jeff Fettig, kind of the vision for where he wants to take the company, and really kind of transforming it from a small OEM wringer washer manufacturer, doing lots of its business as an OEM producer for other brands, to really a great consumer branded company with great innovation across multiple categories and really across the globe. Speaking of kind of where we are across the globe, our footprint is predominantly U.S., maybe 55% or so. Big piece in EMEA, especially now with the Indesit business and the Whirlpool business combined, a much bigger piece globally. And then we do quite a bit of business in Latin America, and then a growing share in Asia. That's our smallest market. You'll see the brands kind of up there in terms of which ones in which regions. Our portfolio is the broadest in North America. We're also in the most segments. We're in some consumer products, some parts, some specialty products, then followed by EMEA, where we really have countertop appliances, small domestic appliances, as well as major domestic appliances. And then again, Asia, some newer brands as we just acquired Hefe Sanyo, and with that, Adequa brand came along with that. And in Latin America, really the Brastemp brand, which for those who are familiar, very great brand, high loyalty, been successful for decades. Council, and then our super premium brand in Latin America is usually the KitchenAid brand. From a footprint standpoint, the footprint, our philosophy as a company is a little unique. We basically produce in the markets for which we support. So as an example, in the United States, 82% of everything we make in the United, or 82% of everything we sell in the United States is made in the United States. A little bit in Mexico, a little bit out of Italy, and a little bit out of Asia. And if you look, that footprint concept is kind of the same everywhere. And the reason why we do that is we can adapt to local tastes, consumer preferences, and get really infrastructure and scale. We're shipping and creating very big goods filled with air if you're moving them around the globe. And so it's important to have that right-sized footprint. EMEA is a little bit more complicated because there's production in a couple countries for the EMEA region. But by and large, that's pretty unique to Whirlpool and been very effective for us in terms of our capital intensity and optimizing our supply chain. In terms of our employee base, again, the footprints kind of say it all, but we have about 28,000 employees across both our manufacturing, technology, headquarters, and then field-based selling and service organizations in North America. Something very similar in EMEA, and a little bit different in Asia and LAR, but similar in terms of number of employees. And then just kind of going back for a moment, in the last 2 years, kind of a big turning point really for our EMEA business and Italy specifically. I've referenced it a couple times today, but the Indesit acquisition and the Whirlpool combination was something that was, probably contemplated for a decade. There are many different synergies across the product portfolio that were attractive to us, the technology portfolio, and even the brand portfolio. And Indesit, the history of Indesit, some of you know much better than I do, frankly, has been one since the 30s, and rooted in Fabriano, and again with a very innovative leader that really kind of drove that vision on his own, and that was combined with really the Whirlpool side of things, which had been in EMEA for a few decades, not nearly as long in EMEA. Also with some pretty good innovators on their own side, but the combination is really what was attractive for Whirlpool to really kind of optimize that. And it comes back to the comment I made earlier today, is that the The region scale is not so helpful in EMEA, but the country-specific scale was very helpful to us, and that was true for not just Italy. That was true in France and the UK and Russia and other markets. So our portfolio of brands, you'll see in EMEA and principally Italy, you'll see KitchenAid plays the role of super premium, so the highest end brand with the highest index, kind of more the built-in look, more the cutting edge features and technologies. Whirlpool kind of plays more the mass plus price point. And then Bachneck, Hotpoint play more of the mass. And then in Italy and some other countries, Indesit plays more the value plus. And that's kind of how we go to market there, really attacking all the consumer, either demographics or attitudinals, making sure we have great coverage in very unique ways. Then there's some local brands that we also have across the EMEA region that are unique to a country. Some pictures or images, I mean, it's the full, kind of gamut of refrigeration, built-in or freestanding, dishwashing, high technology in some cases, sometimes lower, more value-oriented products, kind of all across. You'll see some, high-end built-in cooking products, espresso, steam cookers, coffee makers, and you'll see some advanced technology around the front-load washers that are connected ready, kind of engaging, with replenishments, notifications, and all those kinds of things that are kind of the next wave that we talked about of the future. In terms of the EMEA strategy, it really just kind of mirrors the overall corporate strategy. The company's kind of built on these four, I'll say, strategic areas, which is product leadership, brand leadership, operating excellence, and people excellence. We talked a bit about the product leadership. It's pretty obvious. You have to have product excellence. You have to be great at what you do, high quality, high performance, all the things that consumers are expecting. But that definition is kind of expanding. We're talking about what is product of the future? What is product? What does that encompass? And how many concentric circles around the base product will we look at in the future? And so that's going to be a very different world than it once was. And it's really, I think, a benefit to consumers. It provides an opportunity really to solve more for consumers across more broad use cases in a much more integrated way. And so we'll see that change. And really in 2017, the company will go from having launched, let's say, tens of thousands of connected products to hundreds of thousands in just a 12-month window. And so the amount of big data, analytics, partnerships, and exploring and evolving ecosystems is pretty exciting for Whirlpool. Brand leadership, again, having a portfolio of brand has a lot of advantages if you optimize and use it very well and very smartly. If you don't, it just has a lot of cost and complexity in terms of product development, in terms of manufacturing, in terms of go-to-market. And so it's always something that's front of mind for us to make sure we're going to market in ways that bring out those positives, minimize the complexities, and then drive a uniqueness that others can't do. And our competitive set, by and large, doesn't have a portfolio of brands. And we're the market share leader globally and in each of these markets. And this is one of the tools that helps us in that path or that pursuit. From an operating excellence standpoint, some of the core engineering things I think get a lot of attention. The part that maybe gets less attention is really the advanced analytics, the process-based thinking, the integration and collaboration across multiple functions. That's really the next frontier for our EMEA business in terms of driving out waste in the system, either in inventory or speed to market or promotional or go-to-market investments. And so that operational excellence, how to put a system of processes that match your philosophies and that have metrics behind them that you can measure every day to improve, that's no small task when you're talking about a business that, as I like to say, is really the combination or the intersection of consumer packaged goods, such as, think Gatorade, cereals, whatever it is. So high price, promotion, brand portfolio complexity, high frequent purchase with an industrial business that has high capital intensity, long development cycles. That intersection makes it really, really complicated, but also a lot of fun and drives high leverage when you get the answer correct. And then really people excellence, our values as a company is something we take very, very seriously. They've been the same values for decades. And a little bit to the discussion about management systems, we have a leadership model that has attributes in this leadership model that talk about be bold, lead with an edge, one Whirlpool, straight talk. They're things that we make all leaders aware of, and then we try to develop them along that path. one of the areas in our values is the spirit of winning, and this really comes from our CEOs. For the last couple decades, and it's this unrelenting, willingness to win the right way, in a sustainable way, in a way that you're proud of. And I think that's some of the things that, frankly, we can do a better job, sharing. And other companies, I think, probably need more of that, frankly, to make sure they're as successful as they can be. We're in a hyper-competitive market with high capital intensity and cyclical nature to it. So that usually results in the recipe of a lot of pain. And we've been pretty consistent as a company over the last 10 years in terms of performance and growth. And I think a lot of that has to do with our management systems and our leadership development and our focus on people. It's probably more than I've seen. I've worked at a few other places, Quaker Oats, PepsiCo, and others. And I didn't see that same kind of robustness and model as I entered those organizations as I have here. And I think that helps us in those tough kind of duress times. And diversity, within the people segment, people leadership, we talk about diversity. In the U.S., diversity means certain things. In Europe, for us, it means basically ethnic diversity and female diversity. That's the two challenges that are biggest for us. And so we're working hard on those. Diversity of thought is also helpful for us. We don't have a good balance between probably prospective MBAs and the rest of the employee base, so we're working towards solving that as well. So days like this are an important opportunity for me to come and engage and share with you all on what we're doing. On the female side, we actually have made pretty good progress in our European Italy operations. Our country president or region president is actually a female. Her staff, top 8 people, 3 of the 8 are female. So we've made some inroads there. We feel pretty good about that. A long way to go, and not very consistent throughout the organization at the lower level. So that's kind of where we're pushing a bit more. But it's a priority for both the company globally, but specifically in our Italian headquarter office. And then maybe the last slide on investing. I talked about that earlier. There's lots of discussion about people coming back and supporting Italy. There's discussion about exports and what's the right model to incent the right things. In the case of Whirlpool, we do some exports, certainly. That's accurate. But we're investing. We invested in Indesit and Whirlpool together. We're investing in a technology hub, in a manufacturing hub in Italy. We're investing in our EMEA headquarters, and we're moving it from Camario, Varese to Milan, because we know that likely in order to be sustainable and attract the right people, we need to be there. And so those are all commitments to staying there and kind of making a big investment, because we believe we'll be successful. And there's lots of great things there that we want to pull out and embellish and grow. And so to put 500 or 600 people in that office, it's a pretty big deal. Now we're looking to figure out how do we get all the right things to happen in there in terms of diversity of thought, women, MBAs. MBAs aren't as big a piece as we'd like them to be yet in our Italian offices. So we're looking for solutions to solve that. The biggest tool we use today is kind of leadership programs where we attract MBAs, but they're global programs where we can know that they're going to get expated to wherever it might be, Italy or some other place. And that's the easiest tool for us today. I'm not sure it's the most. It's not the fastest tool for us probably, because the cycle times of these things are over years. There's probably other tools that are a bit faster. But I mean, the amount of investment we'll put in there, we want to make sure we get a return. And we strongly believe that diversity of thought and diversity of employee base increases our chances of a positive result and an effective result. And so, you don't invest 90 million euro or into a new headquarters and all those things if you don't expect a return back. So really, that's kind of the high-level point of what I wanted to cover. Really, is meant more to engage all of you for a bit of a Q&A. So I'd invite all of you, what's on your mind, what would you like to know more about, anything surprise you? Any questions?
So usually in the mergers and acquisition, like the cost synergies that can be extracted from distribution and production optimization are the ones that are more easily that can be more easily extracted and quantified. But I've seen that your strategy is actually to produce locally and sell locally. And also in terms of brands, I've seen that you tend to keep alive the individual brands that you are acquiring. So I was wondering, which are the main sources of synergies that you extract from your M&A strategy?
Yeah, good question. In terms of the integration synergies, they kind of come in phases. We think about it in three phases. The first phase on procurement, supply chain, kind of base operations, and operating footprint. That's the first one. Those are the most tangible, and they happen the fastest. And so that certainly was the focus early on. Really, the long-term value is going to be more about the products, technologies that we optimized, and the brands getting coverage in areas that we didn't get before, either because of attitudinals or demographics or geographic. So, for instance, Whirlpool didn't have a big presence in the UK, but Indesit did. So that was a great fit, very complementary. And now we could add Whirlpool business strategies and brands to already existing business. The portfolio of brands Indesit gave us a little bit more breadth as a brand than Whirlpool could because it was much more well known, had a longer history, resonated more strongly in some cases in some parts of the country. So that gave us basically market share or velocity. So I think you'll see both. The parts that haven't quite happened yet is more on the strategy side. We haven't quite put all the strategies together that are more longer term. And that's kind of the third phase that we'll bring forward. So I would say all of them play a role. You do the math likely on the first phase because it's the easiest to do the math on, easiest to prove a business case, support a return on investment, but you really get the value, the growth out of the second and third phases if we execute well. And so today it's kind of early. We're only 2 years in. First phase is by and large successful and complete. By and large, not totally. The second and third phase are kind of underway now.
Hi, Joe. Thank you so much. I work in the smart home technology industry, and I know that Whirlpool had been investing and moving towards this direction in terms of technology strategy. I was wondering, what is your view on the forecast of the consumer demand in terms of smart refrigerators and smart dishwashers, and how do you segment into the $5.4 billion growing industry as of last year in the smart home technology, connected home technology space?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it's a huge discussion point on lots of dimensions. Actually, Aldo brought it up earlier today that this discussion is not new, right? I think I did my first pitch on IoT 10 years ago. So that concept, I think, has always been there. The harder part has been, what about it? What are we going to do? And so I go full circle back to really compelling use cases are what drive the technology solutions, not the other way around. So we've seen lots of refrigerators with LCDs, or laundry machines with USBs that are supposed to talk to each other, or the ability to turn it on and off or get a notification on your phone via an app. Those are very superficial use cases, and hence they haven't taken off. I think that's probably gone. I think 2017, not just from Whirlpool, but from everyone, will show the really first year in which you see use cases that make a bit more sense to your everyday life, and that the technology is in the background, but the use case is what drives the value. And so I think really I would say the kitchen is a big area. This food journey, as we call it, this kind of recipe, dreaming, what's for dinner, how do I grab that information, make it smart, how do I get the machine to talk to other machines and get ready for it? That really is a ton of value. Then I think the other piece of it, which is probably 1 or 2 steps out, would be the replenishment side via Amazon or others, inventory management, what's in my refrigerator. The amount of food that goes wasted is a really big number globally. And so if there's systems to make that better, to make you more aware of what's going to expire or not, or what I can use in a particular recipe, that will have a lot of value. And if you get into the grocery sequence of replenishment with technology in kind of an ecosystem way, that will have a huge amount of value. So I think you'll see all the investment and all the launches gravitate in those areas. You'll see a lot of this, put a big TV screen on a refrigerator, go away, because it doesn't add a ton of value.
We have time for one more question.
We were mentioning earlier the fundamentals of the economic growth in Italy, and I think it's really encouraging that you mentioned that Whirlpool spends approximately 100 million euros per year in R&D, which is, I think, sizable for this type of firm in Italy. So I wanted to ask you specifically, what do you think are, looking at the R&D activities that you have in Italy, the assets and the type of activities that you do? I mean, what are the strengths of the R&D activities that you do there? And what would you say to other medium or large companies in Italy that maybe do not invest enough in R&D looking forward? How would you maybe encourage them looking at the environment in Italy and how you are actually running the R&D there?
Absolutely, yeah. So, good question. The strengths really are along the cooking dimension, the technical, both from a product development. What does a oven do, or what does a microwave do, or a cooktop do? That's a very big area, and also probably in laundry, front load laundry in particular, in terms of low water, low energy usage. Really, they're very far along on driving good solutions that others can't do. Induction on the cooking side, all these kinds of things that are kind of more technically advanced. That's great. The part that I think I would encourage others to say is that core nucleus of strength, engineering, is not new news. I think most people would expect engineering to be kind of a strength area. I think the application is the part where it can go farther than people have thought. So this, how does it apply to machine? How does it apply to recipes and algorithms that match your recipes to your machines? That's, I think, really where the future is going. And I would say, if we think about how the engineering expertise can be applied broader, then I think you see more spaces to get into. And for us, it's kind of happening around us. We almost don't have a choice, so it became very obvious. It's not always that easy for all industries to see how far it can apply. And so I think, that kind of expertise, it's not every category. We have other, big investments in categories that we think are advanced somewhere else. But for those, cooking, laundry, product excellence, quality, that has been the core of what Whirlpool has done and Indesit has done for decades. So it was kind of easy to latch onto that and then say, how do we build it out? A little bit tougher, I think, probably for some industries. Ours was more clear, frankly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.